Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 23-year-old competitive boulderer from Canada, currently living in Montreal. Welcome back to the COMPCLIMB training series, where I record most of my training, provide in-depth analysis of every session, and just chat about climbing with an emphasis on competition. So going into today's day of training, I am coming off of a little double rest day, and that's just how the week ended up playing out in order to line up my days for the competition coming up this weekend. So anyway, I was a bit curious to see how this double rest day would affect my recent streak of really strong feeling sessions. So I think I'm at like 5 in a row of just feeling super strong and super fresh in my sessions, and it has been a ridiculous amount of fun. I feel like I have these superpowers to play with right now. And so I was curious to see if we would hit like 6 in a row. And honestly, I'd say with this morning session, we probably did. Like this is probably like the 6th session in a row where I'm feeling like at least an 8 out of 10. I was feeling quite strong in this morning session. I'd say this morning was probably like the lower end of the strong sessions that I've been feeling recently, but it's still like an 8 out of 10, I would say. So it was still really good. But usually I don't feel at my absolute freshest after a 2-day rest, which is why I don't do it before competition as well. And I'll usually opt for just a 1-day rest. But I find I like to take a 2-day rest about a week out from a competition just to get a little bit more recovery on my side. But then I make sure that I only have like 1 day off immediately before the competition. And I find that's a really nice recipe for success and helps me feeling like really strong on comp day. So that's also why we just had that 2-day rest, because we're about a week out from the comp at this point. And then yeah, here we are training at Bloc Shop Hochelaga. So the fun thing that happened here recently was that Bloc Shop just celebrated their 10th anniversary, which is very cool. And to celebrate, they had a bit of a fun event where they reset the entire gym with 50 boulders, I think. And yeah, they had like a friendly competition kind of thing. So that's why if you pay close attention, you can see the numbers on the start of all these boulders rather than the V grades. And these are like the numbers of the boulders from the competition. So this boulder that we're getting on here is number 50. So this one is like the hardest one. And it's the only white tape that they put up for the competition. And white tape is the hardest tape grade here at the Bloc Shop gyms. And yeah, actually, you'll notice throughout the session that some boulders will start obtaining V grades and their comp number will have been replaced. And that's because Caleb Thomas was putting the grades on like literally during this session. So you'll see them change throughout the video, I'm sure. But anyway, this boulder, holy cow, this one I was super excited to get on when I walked into the gym and saw this thing. The white tips at Bloc Shop are always very epic, but this one in particular was really speaking to me. It's got this super sick campus move at the start where it's like very difficult to keep this left-hand crimp, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to do like a foot stab move and lose the left hand or try just my absolute hardest to keep my left hand on. And then the ending of this boulder is also super epic and has a very intense finish move. The finish crimp is like super greasy, which adds an extra layer of difficulty in order to snag the finish. So I'm trying to see if I can find a static way to do the ending, but I end up realizing that it is just a jump move. And actually, the first move of this boulder is going to feature a pretty fun tip of the day, I think. So for today's tip of the day, we're going to be talking about a pretty advanced technique, I think, but one that can come in very, very handy in some scenarios. And this is going to be the idea of switching crimp positions mid-move. So this specific situation, I find that I need to grab the left-hand start hold in a 4-finger drag in order to be able to put a whole lot of force through the hold and get enough power to do the campus move to the next hold. But when I reach out to the next hold and I finally get it, it's actually better for me to be in a 3-finger drag position because it's such a stretched out position. And by only using 3 fingers, I can sort of elongate the wide pull-up position that I'm in better. Whereas if I have to get my pinky on, you see how my hand is naturally turned and it sort of shortens the wingspan that I can achieve in a very strong feeling position. So by just dropping the pinky, it allows me to be able to stretch further and get a bit more purchase off the hold. But anyway, it's like a less powerful position to pull off the 3 fingers from like initially from doing the pull move. And then also like the pinky sort of bites me in the butt when I'm actually in the end position. So now we come to this tip of the day where basically at the halfway point through the move, when you have the most weight taken off your arms because you're kind of just floating in the air for a second, that's when you ditch the pinky and you sort of turn your hand so that your wrist is angled a bit better and you can achieve a more stable feeling position in this wide pull-up position. So anyway, yeah, the way you achieve this is really try to find that moment of zero gravity, like halfway through the move where you do this grip change. Because if you don't do it at the right second, you actually can maybe risk tweaking something, because that's why I say this is a bit of an advanced technique, because you need to properly understand like that moment of zero gravity and know when to switch your grip. Otherwise, you can kind of mess your fingers up by really trying to like ditch the pinky and maybe you strain something. So be careful with this technique, but it can come in handy if you are like, if you feel advanced enough to be able to attempt something like this. And then yeah, the last thing I'll talk about with this tip of the day is when do we know, like how do we know when to apply this? And I think it's pretty simple. It's just when you have a move off an edge or a crimp that is like very stretched out and you sort of need to get more power at the start of the move, but then you're stretched out and you need a better grip position to actually hold the 2 holds. And this tip of the day might not apply to everybody. Some people are actually quite good in a 3-finger drag and can actually have enough power in that position to just do the move initially. Whereas myself, I feel kind of weak in a 3-finger drag in most cases, especially to yank off of it. So this technique really suits me because when I get my pinky in play, I find I have a lot more power, but it doesn't help me in the end position of this move, meaning I need to use this technique. So if you're someone who doesn't feel super strong, like yanking out of a 3-finger drag position, definitely look for cases where you can apply this tip of the day. And so yeah, this is probably like the first or the second attempt where I really, really try to embrace this technique, and it is just so important for this move. I need the pinky to get me the power to get to the pinchy hold, but then the 3-finger drag is what helps me actually be able to stabilize. So that was definitely like some really cool micro beta on that first move there. And then you can see I just get like the most desperate snag of the finish hold. I was actually like really in the zone on that attempt. And when I made it up to the finish from the start, I wasn't really nervous. And I usually get nervous when I'm about to send a white tape at Bloc Shop. But I was just like, you know what? No, I'm like in the zone. I just had a clear head and that allowed me to just snag that finish hold perfectly. And that in combination with a whole lot of try hard made for a really cool send of that one. So anyway, we're moving on to a very cool coordination boulder. This one is number 49, and I think this one gets graded V11 after the fact. But yeah, I thought this coordination move was going to be super crazy. Like to do a paddle into another double clutch paddle into like a double clutch position is very coordinative, but I actually was almost able to flash this boulder. I felt quite close to sticking it on my first go, but then I ended up needing a few more tries to do it. And the other idea with this boulder was to not use the gray volumes at the start there. Like I said, Caleb was working today, and he told me that those gray volumes were put up after the fact. And if I wanted to stick to the true coordination element of the boulder, I should try it without them. So that's why I was doing that. And so, yeah, we're like almost at an hour long of session, which is the capacity. But I end up going a little bit overtime in this session because I get really caught up in trying this boulder. So this one was quite unsuspecting, and there wasn't anything like obvious that struck me as anti-style on this boulder. I thought that it actually seems somewhat in my comfort zone, but this boulder ends up proving to be really, really difficult for me. These volumes are pretty slippery, so you see I am having a lot of attempts where I'm just kind of slipping off the wall in various ways. And there's also a lot of room to like interpret the beta, so I end up trying like a lot of different things. Whereas actually I think I should have just stuck with what I was doing on my first attempt, and I waste a lot of time trying to find a better method. It's funny how that works a lot of the time. I'd say for the most part, we actually usually intuit good beta for ourselves in our own bodies on our first attempt. And sometimes when we try to reinvent the beta, we're actually kind of just making it harder on ourselves. I say, in my opinion, that happens for the most part. But you definitely need to reinvent the beta sometimes. But anyway, I realized that I need to stick to the beta I tried on my first go, where I kind of like do this heel hook and then cross over with my right hand. And I just have to kind of commit to making enough room to work my right foot up to the edge of this volume so I can lay back on this crimp. So anyway, I finally make it up to here, and then I'm like, whoa, the finish hold is so far away. It's like a really big last move, and I was not ready to properly like weight my foot and like slowly reach up for it. So I got by the finish there, and probably tried that boulder for like 30 minutes with no luck of sending it. And then I was also talking to Caleb, and he said that the setters were doing that move pretty casually. So it was definitely just on me to be better on that boulder. And I guess it's like anti-style for some reason, but I still can't quite pinpoint why. I think I was just maybe overcomplicating it a little bit or something, but yeah, I was definitely really struggling on that boulder and wanted to retry it in the second session. And speaking of this second session, we're going to have some fun guests for this one. So we have like almost the full extent of Team Rage Climbing is joining me for this session. So I'm not sure if I've actually advertised this yet in the videos, but Rage Climbing is like a local climbing media company based in Montreal, and they are really great for just showcasing like the climbing community in the area. And we've actually partnered up with them. So Richardson's Climbing and Rage Climbing are a dynamic duo these days. And so we have a bunch of like the Rage athletes are joining me for this session. So we got the legendary Toma here. You can see just finished off this yellow one. And then here we have Teo. And yeah, I don't actually remember how long Toma's been climbing for, but Teo here, and then Tristan, who's also, I think, going to make an appearance or two, have only been climbing for like a year and a half, and they're really strong already. And I was very impressed to see just how strong they were for not that much climbing experience in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I was having a fun session climbing with some strong kids, and of course, Loy was also here having a session. So yeah, the agenda for this session is to just have some fun with the psyched crew and finish off, hopefully, all of the rest of the boulders from the comp set here at Hochelaga. There definitely aren't as many boulders up as usual because it's just 50 boulders from the comp, but I had like a mini goal of trying to finish at least all of like the top 10 or something. And yeah, while we're having this session, I try to like get some clips of the Rage kids, but 5 people is definitely a crowd, and I'm trying to like whip my camera around and get some sends, but I don't think we get too much footage of the Rage kids here. So we'll have to plan a day soon where we do a bit more of a focus video with the Rage team and get some action of everyone in like a more dedicated session. So anyway, for this session, we have like mostly a lot of red tapes to stick to. For the morning, I was able to tick off a couple of the black tapes, which are like the V10, 11 range here at Bloc Shop. And then we were able to tick off the one white tape, which is like the V12 plus range. So the red tags are the V8, 9 range. And there's like a good handful of them that I have to get to in this session. And here you can see Toma is also doing his part in order to try and tick off as many red tags as possible for Team Rage. This boulder is actually really cool. This little mantle sequence at the end was really fun. And honestly, this wall is like my kryptonite section of wall at Bloc Shop. You can see Toma is experiencing a bit of what I'm usually used to, which is like a very brutal top out section. The lip on, like there's like 2 more lips over the edge of that wall, and they're very slopey. And I always have to try and like beached whale myself over the top outs on this section of wall at Bloc Shop. And so I knew that if I was able to make it to the top of this V10 here, it was going to be probably another case of this. And I was ready to try hard on the top out. And luckily I am able to put a pretty good flash go on this crimpy boulder. And I am able to indeed make my way up to the top of this thing. But luckily they were actually pretty generous on the top out of this boulder. And there were more holds than usual to work with. And the top out wasn't too scary. But you can see I am like struggling a bit here. And even when they do give you holds, I find it's just always a struggle to top out on these walls. Also, fun fact, Toma showed up a bit late for this session, so he basically like skipped his warm-up. And I think this V10 here that he's getting on is probably like his 3rd or 4th boulder of the session, maybe like 5th. But the fact that he's almost like sending this thing from doing like 3 boulders before is basically unfathomable to me, especially because I'm very particular with doing like a nice thorough climbing warm-up. I'm always amazed when, especially like kids these days can just pull on the wall cold and just do like a V10 as their first boulder. I actually could not imagine that. And if you're interested in seeing more of like these Rage kids, like perform very impressive feats of strength, especially for just climbing for 1.5 years, you got to go check out Loy's channel that I'm constantly talking about. He's done a few vlogs with all these kids, and they are very entertaining. And yeah, you definitely got to go subscribe to Loy if you're not already. And then, hey, let's check out this boulder. This one actually ends up being one of my favorite from the whole day. I think maybe like my 2nd favorite. The red holds white tape was pretty epic, and that's got to go down as number 1. But this one was also very creative, of course, with this backwards spin around foot kick move, and then a very cryptic looking finish as well. I don't actually send this boulder. You can see that I actually can't really reach the finish with my left knee bar, and that also was I'm kind of thinking that there must be something else because of this black foot chip off to the left. Like clearly that black foot chip isn't meant to do a knee bar with the hold because it's too far away. So I figured that the knee bar probably wasn't by design, but I wanted to give it a try at least. But I was like a centimeter short or something from being able to match that finish. And I thought that anything else I would try would be maybe a bit sketchy. So I just left it at that and had to walk away with no top on that very cool boulder. And so anyway, it was back to this 10. I wanted to get redemption on it after sucking on it so hard in the morning. And I was also very interested to see Toma in particular try this thing, because Toma is known as one of the sloper kings in Montreal, if not the all-time sloper lord. And so I had a feeling that if he could maneuver his way through this crimp rail, he would really like the last move. And I also thought he would like the beginning. So I was very interested to put him to the test on this thing. and race him for the top. So anyway, in the epic Zach versus Toma race, I'm able to get to this move here. I really try to commit to going slow as possible for the finish, and then I perfectly snag this crimp, and I'm able to take a very, very desperate swing off of it and get a cool send of this one. But even though I topped this thing, I still feel like I in no way mastered this boulder, and even now, I can't quite pinpoint why it was such an anti-style feeling boulder. Like, I felt like all the moves made sense to me, but yeah, I guess I just wasn't really vibing with this like left-hand pinch up at the top, which is the opposite of how Toma is going to be feeling on this hold, because my suspicion was indeed proved to be accurate, and he just walked the end of this boulder. It probably took me like 10 tries to stick this last move, and as soon as Toma made it up there, he did it easily and proved why he is the sloper king. So yeah, that was fun. We got quite a nice little send train of that one. And so to finish off the session and finish off the majority of the top 10, I think, of the comp blocks, it was off to the slab. So I think these kids, for the most part, are definitely more psyched on like outdoor boulders and board climbing in general. So I had to really convince them to come try the slab with me, because they're not comp kids by any means. But I really like slab, honestly. I think recently, especially living in Montreal, slab climbing is probably becoming my favorite style of climbing. And it's definitely not my favorite style of climbing to do in competition because it's just so stressful. But in training, I really, really love climbing on slab, especially because there are just so many quality slabs in the city. And oftentimes, I like to point out my favorite boulder in a gym, just in these episodes, and it'll usually be a slab boulder. So I definitely wanted to get on this slab because it looked quite cool. And yeah, while I'm saying that Toma isn't a comp kid, he was the only one that was able to flash the slab. So yeah, I just called him Tomoa again, oh my goodness. Toma proves to us all on this boulder that he is not just a sloper kid, and he's got quite a wide range of skills. But yeah, this slab was quite fun. An interesting fact about the slab, honestly, is that I approached this slab the same way that I usually approach slab boulders, which is the fact that I just try to send it on my, I try to flash the boulder, or at least do it as fast as possible, which means that I use all the comp rules in the book. So when I go to try a slab for the first time, I say, okay, I'm gonna use all the screw holes. I'm gonna, break the sequence if I can. I usually just like to try and practice my slab flashing ability. And so if you'll notice, like on my first attempt, and I think even on my second attempt, I use a lot of screw holes in order to match my feet. And I even do the full lean over to the press on the little gray volume. Whereas you're actually also able to just no hands match feet on the start volume earlier in the sequence. But I'm trying to climb it almost a little bit more strengthily because that's how I'll usually feel more secure on slab. But anyway, off camera, after I send this boulder, I go to repeat it and I just didn't film it for some reason. And I tried to intentionally not use any screw holes, find the more bouncy way to do the beginning instead of leaning over to the palm press and just no hands foot match, and basically try to climb this boulder in a bit more of a pure fashion, in a more bouncy style and less strength based. And I did this after the fact, and I didn't have any pressure to try and send the boulder for the first time. So I was able to balance much more nicely and just not feel very unstable because I didn't care as much. So like I didn't do that move, for example. I just no hands foot matched on that little purple triangle. And then I don't use the screw hole here to walk the foot over. I just kind of like balance it over. And anyway, I felt really good about myself when I repeated that boulder in the more bouncy way, and it felt pretty casual. It actually maybe even felt a bit better than doing it the more kind of strengthy-ish way. And it just kind of was a little realization that I should try to intentionally do this more often on my first goes in training. Try to train myself to be able to climb slabs in a bouncy way rather than the strength way right off the bat, because sometimes in competition you will not, like there just won't be screw holes, or the setters will be more intentional about forcing bouncy sequences. And if I'm just used to grabbing screw holes all the time, then maybe I'll be less prepared for these kinds of more bouncy slabs. So that was a bit of a realization I had on that boulder. So anyway, that was a fun session with the Rage team and good boulders at Bloc Shop. Go subscribe to Loy and check these guys out, like I said. And yeah, tomorrow I think actually on the plan is me and Maddie are going to do like a vlog of our own and go to Bloc Drop Chabanel and film a fun video. So look forward to that coming soon. Sure, catchy video right here.